What are your thoughts on people in political in Hawaii? It doesn't seem like, if I was in Hawaii, I don't know if I would want to get involved in politics. Why is it?
It's just,
What is it like?
I mean, Hawaii politics
It seems so peaceful.
is, yeah, I mean, and our politics are different from anywhere else. If you start using negative ads in Hawaii, people will hate you for it.
Really?
They don't work.
I
They
can see
actually have
that.
the opposite
Right.
effect.
Like culturally, it
Yeah,
just doesn't.
yeah, because then be like, oh, why are you talking stink about this guy? Like, what's wrong with you? And they don't pay attention to the things you're saying what's wrong about the other guy. But yeah, Hawaii's just different, even the politics are different. Sometimes it's frustrating because, people don't like to rock the boat. And so there are big changes that need to be made, but it's hard to do when everyone is kind of passive aggressive and tiptoeing around like the real big things that need to happen. So it's a Democrat state, obviously, but it's probably closer to like the old blue dog Democrats of the South.
Yeah, yeah. That's how so my dad on his side, they're all still that kind of like blue. I was like, they don't exist. So he actually lives about 20 minutes outside of Amsterdam, and so I was like, that party doesn't exist really.
Like
that
the
much.
Amsterdam in Europe?
In Amsterdam,
Oh,
in
okay,
Europe.
okay.
So he owns a bar, restaurant there, and
That's
I'm
cool.
helping him a little bit there. But yeah, he's kind of that old blue. I don't know if it exists though anymore.
Not in elected national politics, at least. I meet people all the time who are still, they still call themselves Democrats or whatever, but they have nothing in common with the party of today.
Question: what is your thoughts on Brother Is? When I went there, there's two
First
things
of
I
all-
remember when I went to
first
Hawaii.
of all-
Brother Is and
First of
King
all,
Kamehameha. Okay,
you got to say it right.
Oh, am I saying wrong? Okay.
Yeah, it's Brada is.
Brother Is.
You can delete that part just to make
Just to make sure I
it so you don't completely step off on the wrong
Okay,
foot.
Brother Is. What's your
It's
thought?
even like BRADDAH. Yeah. I mean, he is one of Hawaii's icons. He brought, the kind of Hawaiian music that we grew up with to the world. And, what a wonderful world. That song is played. I've heard that song played all over the world with him singing with his ukulele. What's amazing is, I don't know if you watch American Idol.
Yeah.
But we had a guy from Hawaii who won last year. Iam Tongi.
I remember his video. Yes, I remember his clip.
And he is like, it's almost eerie how much he represents and symbolizes that spirit of Brada Is in his singing and how soulful he is. He's young, obviously, but just how he's able to connect with so many people and bring Hawaii and aloha to the world.
You can kind of just feel it. Like I always feel there's like just a feeling, a vibe, as if it's a vibe that you
truly
get from
is.
him. And a little segue into that, into your book, For Love of Country, just released, talks a lot about leaving the Democratic Party. In your, is there one particular moment that was just where you just knew, where it just hit you, this was the end, like, I'm changing, and it just doesn't stand?
Yeah, it wasn't one singular policy or action or situation that was the turning point. It was a lot of things over a long period of time, and a process where, I sought to try to bring about change from within as a member of Congress for 8 years, as a vice chair of the DNC, as a presidential candidate. And then ultimately it just got to a point where not only did I experience resistance to that change, but like a wholesale rejection coming from the Democrat elite. When you talk about, hey, let's bring the party back to the party of John F. Kennedy, the party of Martin Luther King, the party that defended free speech for everyone, even if you found that speech to be offensive, the party that fought for the little guy, the party that I felt most aligned to when I joined it over 20 years ago. It was not only a rejection, it was a total, how dare you? How dare you? And that was in 2020 when I ran for president. And you look at all that the Biden administration has done over these past few years. It's taken, and this is what I get into in my book. In each chapter, I dedicate each chapter not to any partisan issue. It's really not a partisan book. It talks about why I leave the Democratic Party, but it talks about how they have just gone to a level of insanity that in their pursuit for power that defies and undermines the fundamental principles that make up the foundation of our country and freedom and civilization. And so it did. It got to a point where there was no way that I could in any way be associated with that party of today.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about this before, is that, so the last few weeks the Institute, we've been going to all the encampments on college campuses. And we have, talking to a lot of the young people, interviewing them. And I've been saying this for years, though, in general, when you talk to young people, there seems to be a distrust of institutions. Like that old, what you were discussing, MLK, Kennedy, where people really kind of were inspired, by it doesn't seem to be there anymore.
Yeah.
How do we get back? How do we bring things back to there's a little bit of more inspiration or belief in young people? Or belief in institutions in some sort?
Yeah, I personally what are institutions? And frankly, a lack of trust, it's not just relegated to young people. It's something that I experience, that I feel, and I hear from people across the country. And that distrust in the quote unquote institutions has come from people in positions of power abusing that power and using those institutions either for their own, how can I personally profit from my position and line my pockets and walk out of this public service job as a multimillionaire, or they are weaponizing those institutions so that they can grow their power grab at the expense of the well-being of the American people, or as we are seeing now more and more under this administration, weaponizing those institutions against the American people.
Yeah.
But we saw some of this back when the Patriot Act was passed. A lot of these similar things with giving the government authority to conduct unconstitutional acts. In that example, warrantless surveillance against Americans, painting Americans as potential enemies of the state. So, I don't think it's right for us to dismiss the distrust that's there. I think it's important to recognize where it comes from and why. And it comes from a lot of different places. It comes from seeing those examples of saying, well, no, I can't trust you. You lied to me. You look at what happened during COVID. Why should I trust anything you say when you are blatantly lying and making shit up and calling it science and telling me I'm wrong and saying that I should be censored because I think that we should be healthy and exercise and eat nutritious food. That's disinformation and misinformation and should be censored. And this is the thing that troubles me. It all troubles me, but especially amongst the younger generation that hasn't grown up with, those who were born after 9/11, for example, those who don't know what happened on December 7th at Pearl Harbor, those who did not grow up K through 12 learning about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and why were those words written in those founding documents? What was the thought process that went into it? What was their experience in of our founders in shaping this country? And so when you don't have a feeling of appreciation for the First Amendment, why is free speech so important? Why is this fundamental right, unique almost to America because of what is in our Constitution and the fact that there are no caveats to you're only allowed free speech if it's true. You're only allowed free speech if everybody likes what you're saying. You're only allowed free speech if, you're not offending anybody. No, it is free speech. And the line that's there, frankly, and this is also connected to what we're seeing in college campuses, is the line that's there is if your speech and your actions are making it so that others are not safe, well, that's where you have the necessity of law and order and the rule of law. I'm going off on a couple of different threads here, but they're all kind of connected, where if you don't have an appreciation for free speech and you don't have an appreciation for the fact that my speech is just as protected as yours, then you end up in a situation where what we've seen on these campuses, unfortunately, and it's not all of the protesters, but those who are blocking other kids from going to their class and blocking faculty from going to work and making people actually feel unsafe because of both direct or indirect threats.
Yeah. It kind of leads into my next question, and just patriotism. We just went through Memorial Weekend and Memorial Day. But, kind of back a little bit, is that, right, institutions, still is they have kind of, just from lying, from COVID, all sorts of things, And I personally, and this is what, we talk to young people like, let's tear them all down, But to me, it's like, no, we need institutions. Institutions are important, but we have to be able to trust them.
Yes.
We have to be able to believe in them.
Yes.
But I want to
read... And trust is earned.
Exactly. So many different things for young people. They look at it and they go, oh, well, we just burn it all to the ground. It's like, no, we need to have a stable... But I wanted to read, I want to pull, here's my phone. But it's, so Gallup poll came out and 30% of Gen Z millennials, mostly Gen Z, 30% believe are not proud to live in the country, are not patriotic. I could have go through the whole numbers, but how do we, how do we reverse that? And it's almost like, how do we create a political or whatever candidate? Cultural.
Yeah. In reality, this is exactly what I address, is we should not have blind faith in a political party.
Right.
We should not have blind faith in a politician or in a quote unquote institution, whether it be the Department of Education or the FBI or any of them. If you fill in the blanks, I mean, what are they? They are buildings. They are led by humans, and people in great positions of power are often tempted to abuse that power. And that is the beauty of the vision that our founders had for our countries. They knew that. They recognize that, and they recognize how fragile this republic can be. Right. And so they weighted the power to be in the hands of the people, to hold those others accountable, to hold those abusing their power accountable. And that's where using our voices, exercising our right to free speech is essential. Actually being engaged in the process to vote is essential at every level, not only who runs for president or for Congress, but, people who are running for your local school board or for, your county supervisor or whichever. Every single one has a direct impact on our everyday lives. So people tell me like, oh, I hate politics, I don't vote. It's like, do you like your trash getting picked up? Do you like driving down a street with no potholes? Do you care about how your kid is being educated in school? Every aspect of our lives is impacted by this. And so, for those 30% you said of Gen Zers who aren't proud to be an American, this cuts deep for me as a soldier. And I've been wearing the uniform now in the Army for over 21 years. And so I really do love our country, and I really do believe in the principles and ideals of this country. And that's the difference. That's the difference. I'm not, and this is true of those that I serve alongside. It's not blind faith. People are like, how can you be in a military when all these, crazy decisions are being made? I cherish deeply our ability to live in a free society. I've been in and lived and worked in other countries in the world where there is no such thing as freedom, where the people, the citizens of those countries have no concept of freedom at all, that a lot of people here in America take for granted. In my book, I go into sharing some of the stories of civil rights leaders like John Lewis and Martin Luther King, and how, quite frankly, the adversity that we face today in this country pales in comparison to what they faced in fighting that cause of equality and civil rights and equal and fair justice for all. And even when some of their friends, Martin Luther King gave this powerful speech at a funeral for one of his friends who was killed by a white law enforcement officer. And a lot of the crowd and a lot of people around him were saying, that's it. We got to take up arms. We got to actually fight back. They're killing us. We have to fight back. And he strongly urged them not to stay the course of peaceful civil disobedience and the acts of nonviolent protest. And the thing that he invoked in trying to inspire them to take that high road was to remember those ideals and those principles that our founders laid out for this great country in those founding documents, telling us directly that all of us are created equal with those inalienable rights endowed upon us by our Creator, our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those words are just as true now for us as they were back then. And so if people don't like a certain politician or a certain president or a certain action or policy that's taken place, I got a long list, trust me. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Are you going to go live in another country where you think things are going to be better or more free? No. If we want to change what is very, very, very broken in our country, corruption rooted in its core in many of these institutions, do something about it.
Yeah.
And that's me, that's you, that's every single one of us as Americans. If you don't feel like we live in a great country, if you don't feel like we live in a free country, do something about it. Use those freedoms. Harness that power. Mm-hmm. And you and I may not agree on the best candidate to be able to take us forward. There's nothing wrong with that. We both have the freedom to be able to express our views and what's motivating us and the kind of future we want to see for our country. The problem that we have right now is those very freedoms and our right to be able to do that is under threat.
It leads into my last question with you. And, when I listen to you and I hear this, and I'm not going to lie, I've listened to you when you were with Jocko.
Yes.
With it, and you talk about border.
Yeah.
When I listen, this is, to me, is what majority of America, they just want common sense.
Yeah.
A middle, not a middle ground, but just a solution, really. Yeah. It's just finding a way future-wise.
That's right.
And for your future in politics, and you're probably going to get the $1 million, or your vice president. But I guess for me, it's, where do you see, how do candidates like yourself, I would forefront, but how do we get more of this? And how do we get more of you and your ideas and just that common ground, common sense back to our country?
Running for office?
Just run.
Don't point to me, I'm pointing at you. By being the solution. Yeah. By being the change. Be the change that you want to see. So if that means you're very passionate about education, go run for Board of Education.
Yeah.
If you don't feel like, I often tell people that those who thrive off of the attention or the media or the whatever they view as the glitz and glamour of politics, mm-hmm. those are not the people who should be there.
It seems like those are the ones like the extremes are the ones that are dominating though. And that's even on our social media, it's like, how do, it's like,
we have to use our, it's just, I want to choose my words carefully. I hate the quote unquote politics. Mm-hmm. I am so happy and so grateful to try to use my life in service.
Right.
And we need more people to find their own way to be of service. And maybe that's being a candidate. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's supporting a candidate. Maybe you want to be the person who's doing the research or helping craft solutions to the challenges. Maybe it's through advocacy. Maybe it's through going to college campuses and trying to better inform us all as a society, mm-hmm. so that we know what's going on, so that we know what people are thinking, what's happening around us. Maybe it's being a teacher. I mean, there's so many ways for all of us to be that change, but it all requires action. And frankly, in this environment, it requires courage.
Right.
It's unfortunate that we live in a time where speaking the truth and even voicing your own views requires courage because of the judgment. And my friends might not be friends with me anymore, or because I might be censored, or, Google might block me or whatever. I mean, it requires courage.
Right.
But that courage comes from that love of country. And it's not some artificial idea of a country. It is those ideals and principles that make our country the greatest country in the world.
I couldn't agree more. And thank you so much for sitting down with us and talking.
Thank you.
This is it's like a downstream effect, right? It's like patriotism and all it leads to.
I don't believe in blind. I believe that blind patriotism is dangerous. Mm-hmm. Blind following of any group or person is dangerous. We have to be critical thinkers ourselves. We have to understand what we are rooted in ourselves. What ideals and principles are we grounded in? Mm-hmm. And that will help us in informing how it provides that context with how you view someone who's saying, hey, I want to ask for your vote. Or how you view someone who works in the so-called news these days. Real journalists are very hard to find, but but it informs that context in how we view the world.
Right.
And for me, it's what drives the decisions that I make.
Well, I hope for more. So, and I hope to see, we're going to push your book around and tell more people. So thank you so much for visiting us.
So
and
good
talking
to
with
see
me.
you.
Good to see you.